How's it going, guys? Thanks for joining me back on the channel. I'm Titus, and I really love to see you again. How y'all doing today? Me, I've spent the last good couple of hours looking up some research for this video because today we're going to talk about, once again, everyone's favorite subject, math. That's right, because in Raid, as with most video games, at the end of the day, it's all just math. It's all numbers. And what I realize is that sometimes Raid has a really hard time they don't do a great job of it, but they don't exactly do the greatest job sometimes of explaining to you what the numbers and these words mean. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we'll go to Kayle, as you can see here in the bottom right, we just got numbers. So we got stats, we got HP, attack, defense, and we have a little button right here that we can click on to open up a more complex view of his stat breakdown. And this is where you can actually see how the numbers got to where they are. So on the left here, we have basic stats. Now, the basic stats are just if you have a champion, whatever level they are, however they exist in the current time, if they were completely naked and had no masteries, they were getting no bonuses whatsoever, this is where these numbers come from. As you can see, then obviously we start adding things to them. So for instance, I have Kayle in things like attack percentage chest, speed boots, crit rate gauntlets. And as you can see here, that's where these green numbers are. This is all the stats that you're getting from your artifacts, the things that you put on your champion. From there, we also have affinity bonuses. Now, the affinity bonuses are coming from your Great Hall. Whenever you upgrade these are applying blanket stats to everybody applicable. So as you can see here, this is for magic champions, spirit, force, and void. And what we have is I put in a couple points here for attack because of a challenge. And I've been working on accuracy because generally speaking, most people believe that most people will tell you accuracy is the best because it's one of those annoying stats where you need it, but gearing for it sometimes kind of feels bad. So moving on from there, going back to Kayle stats, that's where that's coming from. Next, we have the Classic Arena. Classic Arena, as you probably well know, but maybe haven't noticed, because this screen doesn't tell you, because I went to the wrong screen. It's the Great Hall again. Depending on what tier you are in, all of your champions across your entire account are going to get certain stat benefits. It's always HP, attack, and defense. And what you see from here is as my tier goes higher, these bonuses get higher. And that makes the champions across my entire account better. Then we have the bonuses we're getting from masteries. So that would be if your champion has masteries, things like Kayle has extra crit rate, extra crit damage, things of that nature. Then we have Faction Guardian. So Faction Guardians, especially for new players, is not something you're going to have a ton of. But whenever you get duplicates, and it's very important that a lot of times you don't feed duplicates unless you have lots of them. As you can see here, the 1 duplicates I think I do own on this account. No, I don't. I don't own any duplicates on this account at the moment. You get increasing stat bonuses. So if I had 2 Kayles, I would get 10% HP across all rares in the Dark Elf Guardians. Or Dark Elf, sorry, this is the Dark Elf Guardian. Words. All right, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. It is what it is. But essentially for every pair you put in here, now all my Dark Elf rares will get these bonuses. So it starts with 10% HP, then 10% attack, increase to accuracy and resistance, defense, and then finally speed. And you would be able to see that in the champion tab under Faction Guardians. Sorry, quick cut. I got 2 things flipped, and I just wanted to correct that now. Empowerment is when you go to your Guardian Ring, and as you can see here, you can empower champions. Now, you can only do this for mythics, legendaries, and epics, and essentially you can take duplicate copies of a champion and feed it into that champion in order to get more bonuses to that specific champion. Unlike Faction Guardians, which is all champions in that faction at that tier. Then we have Blessing. Now, Blessings, as I do have one for Kayle, but haven't assigned yet, which I think I probably would just do, probably just Phantom Touch. But if I were to give him Phantom Touch, as you can see here, the first thing that I would give him, besides this bonus right here, is it would also give him extra HP. So if I just give him Phantom Touch, now when we go over to the total stats, that Blessing is there. Then we have Relics. Relics are the things that you can equip to your champion. If you're over the level, I think of 30 or so, they give you a free relic, and this relic gives you some stats. Every relic will give you different kinds of stats, and those will also show up on this screen. Finally, we have area bonuses. Now, I can't show you on this account, but this is essentially when Live Arena opens and you're getting medals in Live Arena. They also have in your Great Hall, the area bonuses, which is stats, but instead of being tied to affinity, it's free stats tied to where whatever content it is. So you get bonuses to all champions attack when you're in Fire Knight. You get all champions extra speed on Iron Twins. So that is essentially exactly how all of these stats are shown to you. And outside of that, they're pretty self-explanatory. I plan on in the future kind of doing a very deep dive into the really complicated math on these stats, because at face value, they seem very simple. It's just a lot of it's just addition, right? I mean, we learned how to do addition in kindergarten. However, when you're actually getting down to, say, how does my attack stat formulate into my abilities dealing damage? Because as you can see here, we have damage based on attack, but we also have books in here which increase that damage by a total of 20%. What does that 20% mean? And that's not showing me on the total stats. And I'll get into that in a later video. I think my next video after this will probably be damage calculations and damage reduction calculations. And that's where the math starts to get real complicated. At least complicated in the sense that if you're like me and you finished high school and college, and then you never touched math ever again, and you only really do math because you're a giant nerd like I am. HP is, of course, just your hit point pool. When this hits 0, your champion dies. Attack and defense are a little more complicated. Attack is giving you this value, which the game then uses to calculate all of the damage that your champion does across their abilities. And again, there are damage calculations that are far more complicated, and that's why, for instance, my Kayle has 2700 attack, but when I watch him run through a dungeon or something and he uses his A2, it's dealing like 50k. Well, why did that 2700 become 50k? Defense is how much damage your champion reduces. So for instance, say Kayle does 1,000 damage to another Kayle. The hit is 1,000. When it hits that Kayle, they use their defense to decide how much of that 1,000 they're actually taking. So when your champion does, when your Kayle does his A2 and it does 4,500 damage or 45,000 damage, that is after it's already been calculated against the enemy's defense. These three stats get a little more complicated when you factor in champions like Vergus, who his damage is calculated by his defense, which one means that attack is absolutely wasted on him. And two, the tankier he is, the more damage he deals. Again, I'll show the calculations in another video. There are also champions, though I don't know if I have any at the moment, whose abilities scale off of HP. I don't believe I actually have any right now that do that. But does his? No. But yeah, champions, when it comes to their damage, can be dealt in three ways, either by their HP, their attack, or their defense. Defense and HP are fun because it also means that champions can deal a lot of damage and also be exceptionally tanky. Speed is how the game calculates how fast your champion's turn meter fills, that little yellow bar at the bottom. And the speed is essentially just compared across all of the champions at that time. If my Kayle has 200 speed and your Kayle has 150 speed, my Kayle is always going to go first. Crit rate. Crit rate decides whether or not crit damage gets applied. So as you can see here, with my Kayle, I have 82% crit. So 82% of the times where he attacks, if it is a crit, then the crit damage is multiplied through your attack. Essentially what that means is the damage is calculated, and then if it's a crit, then the crit damage is another further multiplier on top of the original damage. Resist and accuracy are entirely based on debuffs, whether a debuff gets placed or whether you resist a debuff. There's a lot of math behind that, and I'll probably make a video talking more in depth about buffs and debuffs in general, and I'll also cover resist and accuracy. Finally, we have ignore defense. Ignore defense is actually really easy because whatever this percentage is means when you attack and you deal damage, whatever their defense is and however much damage they're mitigating, you're ignoring a flat percentage of that. So that was just a really quick run through of the stats and roughly what those stats mean. Again, in later videos, I'll be showing you guys damage calculations, how much accuracy versus resist you need to make sure your debuffs are landing, and all that fun stuff. But I didn't want this video to be too long, and I've got a lot to do today. So something quick for you guys, just to help you kind of wrap your brain around what these numbers and words mean. In the meantime, if you like the video, if you like the vision of the channel, go ahead and like this, subscribe, throw a comment down there, all that fancy YouTube stuff. I've been Titus. I gotta head out, but I'll catch you guys next time.